holding on page 7b, and we've been learning about the laws of animals being brought as sacrifices, and what funds do you need to purchase these animals with? Do they need to be unconsecrated funds, or can they come from consecrated funds, like called Meiser Sheni, funds that anyway are being used for food that you're going to buy in Jerusalem and celebrate? Can you use the money from Meiser Sheni and buy sacrifices that you're going to use, you're going to celebrate with them during the holiday? So maybe you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and maybe you could use it. So the Mishnah told us that there are 3 sacrifices on the holidays, and each of the 3 sacrifices has a different law. The burnt offering can have nothing to do with your Meiser Sheni money. 0. You can't use any of it for Meiser Sheni. The Shalmei Simcha, the rejoicing peace offering, you could use all of it from Meiser Sheni money from the second tithing, which you're supposed to enjoy and celebrate. You can use that money and buy the Shalmei Simcha, the joy holiday offering. But the Shalmei Chagiga, which is the peace offering for the holiday, but it's not the joy offering, it's the holiday peace offering. This offering, you can't use all of it from Meiser Sheni money, but you can use part of it from Meiser Sheni money. So we got 3 animals, 3 sacrifices, and 3 different laws about all of them. One of them, you can't use any Meiser Sheni money. One of them, you can use all of it Meiser Sheni money. And the other one, you could only use part of it Meiser Sheni money. And that's the ruling of our Mishnah. The Gemara had to go back and forth and figure out that there must be a little, there's some unclarity in the Mishnah. There are some words missing. And so the Gemara fixed up the Mishnah to fit the way it should be. And that is the final reading of the Mishnah was that if you have a regular burnt offering, not a holiday burnt offering, just a regular burnt offering, and you have vows that you're bringing because you're in Jerusalem for the holiday, so you want to bring those vows that you've made previously. So all of those animals can be brought on Chol HaMoyed. They can be brought on the intermediate days of the holiday. Chol literally means mundane, the mundane days of the holiday. That's when those sacrifices can be brought. However, they cannot be brought on the actual holiday itself. And reason being is they're not necessities for this day. The other law that the Mishnah then says is the burnt offering that's needed for the holiday, that can be brought even on Yom Tov itself, and it needs to be brought from unconsecrated funds. So that's the burnt offering of the holiday. And the Simcha, the Shalmei Simcha, the joy offerings, which are brought on the holiday, they can even be brought min ha-meiser. They can even be brought from Meiser Sheni money. And the holiday peace offering, which is not the joy offering, it's just the holiday peace offering, that sacrifice, and the example given is the Pesach, the first day of Pesach, that there's an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says it can have nothing to do with Meiser Sheni money, but Beis Hillel says, yes, it could be brought partially from Meiser Sheni money. So according to Beis Hillel, who we follow, there are three different laws about these three different sacrifices. One can be brought totally from Meiser Sheni money. One can be brought nothing from the Meiser Sheni money, and one can be partially from Meiser Sheni money. And then the Gemara says, Tanya Nami Hachi. Now that we fixed up the words of the Mishnah, we now have a brisa, which is a statement of the Tanoim, but it wasn't edited like the Mishnah. We have a brisa that also says the same wording, almost exact. It says, Oilais Nidarim Unadavais. When you have regular burnt offerings that are not connected to the holiday, then you have Nidarim and Nidavais, the two types of pledge sacrifices that you've pledged throughout the year, and now that you're coming for the holiday to Jerusalem, you may as well bring the sacrifices that you need to bring, that you've pledged throughout the year, in addition to the burnt offerings that you've pledged, or other pledges of peace offerings. So you're going to bring all those, but they can only be brought on Chol HaMoyed, only on the mundane days of the holiday, which are the intermediate days of the holiday. B'moyed ba'os, they are brought on the intermediate days of the holiday, Chol HaMoyed. But b'yom tov, on the day of Yom Tov itself, when you're not allowed to drive and so on, that day, Einon ba'os, these sacrifices are not burnt. You can't bring them. They're not done on those days. It's a holiday. There's certain restrictions. It's the actual holiday. One of the restrictions, you don't just slaughter and burn and slaughter and cook things that are not necessary for that day. V'oilas re'iyah, but what about something that is an obligation for that day? The burnt offering of the holiday, that is an obligation. So the oilas re'iyah ba'a afilu b'yom tov, that comes even on Yom Tov. I don't know if I told you where I'm reading from. I'm sorry. We're on page 7b, and I'm reading this brisa, Tanya Nami Hachi. I'm going to start again from the beginning of the brisa. Tanya Nami Hachi, we're about 10 lines up from the bottom of the page, 7b, and 7b, 10 lines up from the bottom of the page. This is a brisa that is going to present the same laws that we have in our Mishnah after our Mishnah has been corrected, after we've added the correct words in our Mishnah. This brisa seems to be a very close replica of the Mishnah, the Mishnah that we've corrected, that we've made it work with the opinion of Beis Hillel, and this is, the way it was meant to be written. And now we have a brisa that basically says this as well, what it says in our Mishnah. So the Gemara says, Tanya Nami Hachi, we also have a brisa like this. And as I told you, a brisa was not really edited like the Mishnah. The Mishnah was precise, the way exactly it was chosen by Rebbe, that he wanted this Mishnah in the to be written and canonized, so to speak, in the 6 books of the Mishnah. And the brisas were, in a certain sense, like uncanonized. They weren't established as the official Mishnah. They were laws, and they sometimes give us insights into the laws and opinions, different opinions sometimes. But Rebbe didn't choose it to be written to be part of his Mishnah, series. So the Gemara now says this brisa, Tanya Nami Hachi. We also have a brisa like this. Oilais nedarim unedavais b'mayed bois. Oilais are burnt offerings. Nedarim and nedavais, pledges. Again, we mentioned yesterday the difference. Neder is when a person pledges, I'm going to bring a sacrifice, but he doesn't say, this is my sacrifice. He doesn't have the animal in front of him, and that's a neder. He's just saying, I'm going to bring this and this sacrifice. Nedava means he has his animal in front of him, and he says, this animal is going to be, let's say, a peace offering, he says. So that that's a nedava. That's another type of pledge where he actually pledges the actual animal. So these two, nedarim and nedavos, and oilos, which is the other example, all of these three are b'moyed ba'is. They could come on the mundane part of the holiday. The Yom Tov, on the Yom Tov day of the holiday, Einon ba'is, they do not come. You don't bring them on the Yom Tov day of the holidays because they're not necessities for that day. They could be brought during Chol HaMoed. They could be brought during the intermediate days. They don't need to be brought on that day. We're not going to bring them on a day of Yom Tov if they're not necessary for that day. V'oilas re'iyah, but the burnt offering of the holiday, that's ba'a afilu b'yom tov, that is brought even on Yom Tov. Even on the actual holiday, like the first day is the real holiday day that you're not allowed to drive. And on that day, you are supposed to bring the korban re'iyah, the burnt offering that is meant to be brought on that day. It could be brought afilu b'yom tov, even on Yom Tov. And when it is brought, or the other way of reading it is shehein ba'in, and when they are brought plural. There's another version here that it's in plural. Shehein ba'in, when they are brought, einon ba'in ella, they are brought from ella min hachulen, only from the mundane, from the unconsecrated, meaning that you cannot use Meiser Sheni money to pay for your burnt offering. It is allowed to be brought on Yom Tov. You bring that burnt offering on Yom Tov. It's the holiday burnt offering called Oilas Re'iyah, the oila, the burnt offering of being seen or seeing Hashem, being seen by Hashem. And that is brought even on Yom Tov, but it can only be brought from Chulin, not from Meiser Sheni money. It has to be unconsecrated money. V'shalmei simcha. Now the other extreme is shalmei simcha. This is the joy offerings. Boyin af min ha-meiser, they could be brought even from Meiser, completely from Meiser. You could use you could buy the animal entirely from your Meiser funds. You have Meiser Sheni money, because what happened was you have 100 cases of grapes, and your grapes are worth 100 cases, $10 a case. So your grapes are worth $1,000. So you first have to take truma. Well, first bikurim, actually. Then you take truma, you separate truma, which is like 1/50th. Then you got to give Meiser Rishon to the Levi. So you give 10 of them to the Levi because you have 100. So you got to give 10 to the Levi. And then Meiser Sheni is you could calculate how much they're worth. And if 10 of them, if they're worth $10 each, it's $100. So you take that $100. If you live far away, if you instead you want to carry a case of grapes with you, you could. But the easier way to do it is redeem it for money, $100. You have your $100 in your pocket. You take it with you to Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, you could buy a korban called a Shalmei Simcha korban. You could buy this sacrifice of simcha, of joy, and could be totally brought from your Meiser Sheni money. Really? I could buy it from my Meiser Sheni money? I thought anything that's an obligation can't be brought from Meiser Sheni money. So here we see that the Shalmei Simcha is it has a leniency that it can be brought from the Meiser Sheni money, and the understanding behind it, we'll have to see what it's based on. What is the reason why it could be brought even from Meiser Sheni money? So Rashi here says that if you have Rashi, the Rashi in your Gemara, it's 5 lines up from the bottom. Rashi has an interesting line. He says, "The lav davar shebechoyvahu." It's not something that's an obligation, really. You normally can't use your Meiser Sheni money for an obligation, but this is not called an obligation. Really? I thought you need to have joy. b'makom sheyesh basar, in a place where you have meat, you don't need to bring a meiser, a shalmei simcha, because you have meat already. Once you have meat, now you have money of meiser sheni, and you're supposed to use it in Jerusalem. And you want to buy peace offerings with it. You could use any joy for the mitzvah of joy. So because it's not a full-fledged necessity to bring this carbon, because if you have meat, you don't need to bring it. As long as, so therefore, you could even bring it from Meiser Sheni money. So that's the explanation that Rashi gives. And now we're going to continue in the Brisa. The Chagigas Yom Tov, now comes the third animal. The third animal is also a peace offering, but it's not a peace offering of joy. It's called a peace offering of the holiday, the Chagigas, or the festival. The Chagiga, this offering, this peace offering, the Brisa continues and says that Chagigas Yom Tov Arishon Shal Pesach, the Chagiga of the first day of Pesach, Beis Shammai says it has to be entirely for unconsecrated funds. You cannot use any Meiser Sheni money. Beis Hillel says you actually could use part of it as Meiser. Now, the wording in the Gemara is not so clear, and you could read it that you could use it all from Meiser, but that's not what it means. It means that it could be partially from Meiser, because we'll see in the Gemara later, it's going to ask, I thought you're obligated in a Chagiga. And if you're obligated, how could you use your Meiser money for an obligation? We already proved, we're very clear that you cannot use Meiser money, funds, the second tithing, you can't use that for anything that you're obligated. And if you're obligated in a Karban Chagiga, in the holiday peace offering, so then you would not be able to use these funds of Meiser. So how can you do it? So the answer is that we're talking about additional funds, that you're not using it completely from the Meiser Sheni money. You're using the Meiser Sheni money as extra bonus money on top of what your sacrifice is officially costing, and we'll soon see the argument among the rabbis what that refers to. But this is talking about partial Meiser Sheni money being used and not completely Meiser Sheni money being used. So what comes out from this is the way I summarized it, that we have three sacrifices, and all three sacrifices have different sources of their money. One of them could be completely from Meiser Sheni money. One of them cannot be any of it from Meiser Sheni money, and one of them could be partially from Meiser Sheni money. And I'm following the view of Beis Hillel, because according to Beis Shammai, there are three sacrifices, but two of them do have the same law that they cannot use. You cannot use the any Meiser Sheni money in two of them. Okay. So now the Gemara asks and touches on the 14th day of Nisan. And it also compares the first day of Pesach to the first day of Sukkot and the first day of Shavuos. So in other words, the Mishnah and the Brisa both seem to give examples of the first day of Pesach. Why did it mention specifically? And it didn't say this is an example. It sounded like it's specifically on the 15th of Nisan, the first day of Pesach, specifically. That's what it sounded like. And that sounds a little surprising. Let me just put the air on. Sorry, getting a little hot over here. So the Mishnah and the Brisa both gave an example of the first day of Pesach. Why is it saying that? I know what the first day of the holiday is. I don't need you to give me an example, first of all. And second of all, why do you pick Pesach? What is it specifying that we're talking about Pesach? So this is the Gemara's question, and this is the question asked on the third line up from the bottom of the page. Maishna, why is it different? Chagigas Yom Tov Harishon Shel Pesach. The first day sacrifice called Chagiga of Pesach. Why is that sacrifice singled out, sounding like that has some special rule? That sacrifice, we have an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. It's called the Chagiga sacrifice. It's a peace offering. It's the holiday peace offering. And that sacrifice has an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Why is that sacrifice singled out as if that's the only case where Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue about this sacrifice, but we bring it on Sukkot and on Shavuos also? And it's specifically mentioning the one on Pesach is a argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Why is this one being singled out? Why is it different than the others? So Amar Rav Ashi says, no, it's not being singled out, comparing it to the other first days of the holiday. It's being singled out, comparing it to a unique sacrifice that was brought on Erev Pesach. What do I mean? Well, the Korban Pesach was supposed to be eaten al hasoiva. Al hasoiva means that you are already partially satisfied, and this is going to complete it's going to be the gemar, the end of your satisfaction of being full. I sort of like to call it dessert. It's meant to be like you're already somewhat satisfied, and this is going to complete your satisfaction. It's on the soiva. It's going to be it's going to complete your your feeling of, you're going to feel completely satisfied with it. So what that means is that you need to eat a meal beforehand, so that when you come here, you'll feel full. So that when you eat the Korban Pesach, you'll be completely full. What do you eat beforehand? So the law is that they would bring a Korban Chagiga that would be eaten together with, it would be eaten before you would eat the Korban Pesach. By doing that, you won't have a problem. Now, the Korban Chagiga is not exactly an obligation. Why is it not an obligation? Because it all boils down to how many people you're having. If you're having a lot of people, it depends on what animal you're using for your Korban Pesach. Why? Because if you have a very large animal, you're going to get a nice big steak, 26-ounce steak or something, a nice big steak. You're going to be quite full when you have that steak, and you don't need to eat a chagiga beforehand. But if you're going to be together with a group, if you're with a group that has a whole bunch of family members, and they're hardly going to get you an egg size you're going to have maybe 2 ounces of meat from the Korban Pesach, you better find an alternative method to be full. And that's going to be by bringing a Korban Chagiga. So it really depends. The Korban Chagiga really depended on how many people are eating with you and how big your sacrifice of the Paschal offering is. Because if it's a big Paschal offering, you'll be able to be satisfied with it. If you don't have a big Paschal offering and you have a lot of people, then you're really not going to hardly have enough. So there was before Pesach, the day before Pesach, there was a extra sacrifice that was commonly brought called the Karban Chagiga. Now, that's not the same as the Karban Chagiga that's brought on the holiday. Karban Chagiga brought on the holiday is an obligation, and it's not meant. It's not about getting yourself full so that you'll be able to eat some other sacrifice on top of your satisfaction. That is not the reason of the regular Karban Chagiga. That's the reason of the Karban Chagiga on the 14th day of Nisan on Erev Pesach. So the Gemara here says this question, and it asks this question: why are we singling out the first day of Pesach? And the Gemara's answer is that it's singling it out and comparing it to the Karban Chagiga of the 14th day of Nisan versus the Karban Chagiga of the 15th day of Nisan. The 14th day of Nisan is the day before Pesach, and the 15th day of Nisan is the day of Pesach. And we're comparing those two, and we're saying that this is teaching you that the Chagigas Chamisha Asar I'm reading now inside, Chagigas, the last bottom line in page 7b, bottom line, Chagigas Chamisha Asar the 15th day's sacrifice called Chagiga, peace offering of the holiday, yes, has this argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Chagigas Arba Asar, the 14th day's Chagiga, the 14th day's peace offering of Nisan, the 14th of Nisan's peace offering, that Loi does not have this argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Now, and what that means is that it would not need to be from unconsecrated property. It doesn't have that law that it has to come from unconsecrated property. It could come from Meiser. You could bring it from your Meiser money. And the reason would be that it's not really a necessity. It's not an obligation to bring it. It's brought for getting yourself satisfied to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of eating the Pesach on top of your satisfaction, on top of being satiated. That's what it's for. And you could be satiated from the Karban Pesach itself, and you don't necessarily need this. Okay, so now we turn to page 8a. Alma Kosovar. From here we see that Chagigas Arba Asar Lav D'Oraisa. I guess it's not a biblical obligation. If you're able to take it from Meiser money, and we just explained that you don't necessarily need this Chagigas Arba Asar, the 14th day holiday. You don't need this 14th day holiday sacrifice, peace offering. So therefore, it must be that the 14th day is not a biblical obligation. Otherwise, you would never be able to use your Meiser Sheni money, your second type money. Now, it is interesting to look into the concept that it's not a biblical obligation, but is there a rabbinic obligation to have this 14th day, the 14th of Nisan's peace offering? Is there a rabbinic obligation in having it or not? But definitely there's no biblical. Our Gemara clearly states that there is no biblical obligation. Now, the Gemara then says, Amar Mar, Master said, we just said earlier, Beis Hillel Leimer min ha-Meiser. Beis Hillel says that you can take some Meiser money. The way we explained it was you can take some Meiser money and use it together with unconsecrated money to buy the Shalmei Chagiga, the peace offering of the holiday. So you're allowed to use that money for the peace offering of the holiday. And the Gemara asks, Amai, why would you be allowed to do this? We're on the third line on page 8a. Amai, why? How could you do such a thing? Davar shebachayvahi. This is a matter of obligation. You're obligated to bring a chagiga on the holiday. We spoke earlier about the chagiga on the 14th day of Nisan, which is the day before the holiday. But on the holiday, each of the holidays needs a korban chagiga. You need to bring a sacrifice, a peace offering. So the Gemara asks, why would you be allowed to bring this sacrifice from Meiser Sheni money? So the Gemara explains anything that's a chayv, an obligation, can only come from unconsecrated money. And this is an obligation. The Gemara answers, Amar Ula b'toifel. Ula says we're talking about you're using this money as an addition. This is called like a supplement to the monies that you already are using. You're supplementing the sacrifice with extra money from your Meiser Sheni money.
Oh, what is she?
So because you're using Meiser Sheni money, in addition to your regular money, unconsecrated money, that's why it would be permissible to do it, according to Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says that we're talking about the Teifel. This is Ula's statement, that we're talking about where you're supplementing you're supplementing the funds of to buy your sacrifice with Meiser Sheni money. Now, there's an argument now between the Amoy Ra'im, between the rabbis of the Talmud. How do you fulfill this? What does it mean to supplement your money with Meiser Sheni money? Or supplement your sacrifice with Meiser Sheni? What does it mean to supplement? So there's an argument between the rabbis of the Gemara. Chizkiya Amar Chizkiya says, Toiflin behema levehema. You can supplement an animal with animals. In other words, you could have an additional sacrifice that's bought with Meiser Sheni money. And ve'ein toiflin ma'is lema'is, but you would not be allowed to join funds. So supplementing the funds, the money part, that, according to Chizkiya, cannot be done. What you can do is bring more than one sacrifice, and the additional Chagiga sacrifices, they basically could be brought from peace offering money. But the other opinion is Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Toiflin ma'is lema'is. You could supplement money for money. V'ein toiflin behema levehema, but we don't want you to have extra sacrifices. So what is the argument over here between Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan? So in order to understand the argument, we're going to read to you the Rashi. Rashi over here says that Let me just mute everyone. For some reason I'm hearing. Okay. So Chizkiah says you could add animals. You could supplement with more animals. And Rashi says, you have a lot of people mouths to feed, and one animal is not going to be sufficient. So you bring one Chagiga, one of these holiday offerings from unconsecrated funds. In the rest, you bring from Meiser Sheni money. And even the rest you bring from Meiser Sheni money. And even though all of them are brought on the first day of the holiday, they're called Chagiga. They are called Chagiga. You already were yoitze your obligation from the unconsecrated one. So even though they're all being called a Chagiga, and you're using your Meiser Sheni money for them, which sounds surprising, but the thing is, you already fulfilled the obligation from with first animal. So this animal is these other animals are okay to be added to your initial animal. Your initial animal was brought with unconsecrated money. These are additional animals. Yes, they're called chagigas, but since you brought one already with unconsecrated funds, you could use consecrated, you could use Meiser Sheni money for the others. That's one option. Now, Rabbi Yochanan says that, one second, Chizkiah did not like the idea of supplementing money with money. And Rashi here tells us that you wouldn't supplement money with money in order to buy an animal. And if you supplement the money of the Meiser Sheni to your regular money, you'll end up buying a very nice big animal. So what's wrong with that? So the thing is, so Rashi over here says that you don't do that to buy one big animal, and Rabbi Yochanan says the opposite. But then Rashi explains. He says to master, it seems to him that it's better to fulfill your obligation from the unconsecrated funds. That would be better than bringing a complete animal from the mundane let me read the Rashi inside. It's a little hard to translate it without reading the Hebrew. Ve'ein teiflin ma'is lema'is. According to Chizkiah, you don't supplement the money for the money. Liknais behema gedola, to buy a big animal. Chizkiah doesn't agree with that. Again, there's two ways to learn here. Let me just clarify again, so that it's, I'm not. I don't want to talk to the walls. I want to make sure you have it clear. There's two ways of learning here. One way, you have to. The Mishnah tells us, or at least the Gemara is explaining to us, that you can use some Meiser Sheni money to buy this Chagiga. But how you do that is two opinions. One opinion is that you buy a very big animal. Now, our Mishnah said that you need to at least use for a Chagiga 2 silver coins, according to Beis Hillel, 2 silver mois. In order to be yoitze, to fulfill the obligation, it needs to be at least valued at 2 silver mois. So you know what? Use 2 silver coins that are unconsecrated. Buy a very big animal, and the rest you use from consecrated money, from Meiser Sheni money. So you buy a big animal, and that's one option. That you supplemented the money that you took 2 silver mois unconsecrated, you took 100 silver mois that are Meiser Sheni, put it together, you got 102 silver coins, and you may buy in a nice big animal. That's Rabbi Yochanan's view. The first view, Chagiga, said no. You can't do that. The way to do it is that you gotta buy your Meiser Sheni monies separate animals. You can't buy one big animal and mix the funds together. You have your Meiser Sheni, you have your holiday peace offering that has zero Meiser Sheni money in it. And then take your Meiser Sheni money, buy more animals. And the other animals could be considered Meiser Sheni, but they don't need to be from the unconsecrated funds. So 2 ways of doing it. Do you want to have one big animal, or do you want to have 10 small animals? That's really the 2 opinions. But these 2 opinions are exclusive, like they don't agree with each other. They don't allow the other option. Neither of them allow the other option. So Rashi here, and that's what I was reading, this Rashi. So Rashi starts off telling us, you don't join, you don't combine, supplement money with other money and then buy a big animal. Look nice to buy a big animal. Rabbi Yochanan says the opposite, that you would buy one big animal. To this rabbi, it seems to him better. It's much better that he fulfills his obligation from unconsecrated funds. They have one animal that's completely from chulin. That would be a better way to do it. This is Chizkiah. And according to the other master, Rabbi Yochanan, it would be better that you have a mixture of unconsecrated funds with every bite, with every eating. And later on, we're going to learn from Sukkim that this is allowed. In other words, it sounds surprising that we're going to allow this, but they learn it from Sukkim that this would be accepted to do this what's called teifel, to be supplement. Okay, so that's basically the idea here, that we have the 2 ways of using Meiser Sheni money to supplement your peace holiday or holiday peace offering.
Rabbi,
okay, yes.
Isn't there a problem? I mean, with the method in which you have both consecrated and unconsecrated in the same animal, because if something happens to the consecrated animal, you end up also losing the monies that from the unconsecrated side that you've used to buy this animal. So if something goes wrong with the animal, for example, they find a mum of some kind, that animal has to be set aside and basically allowed to whatever to die on its own, and you end up losing both aspects because of the fact that you've put in everything in, both consecrated as well as consecrated funds into the animal.
So there are a lot of complicated laws about these type of things, but I don't know if it applies here, and I'll tell you why. This animal, I'm using the term consecrated and unconsecrated with regard to the money. The animal itself is fully consecrated. This is a complete sacrifice. It's 100% sacrifice. Just where did you get the money from? Normally, we don't allow you to bring an obligatory sacrifice from what I'm using a term consecrated funds. But really, the issue that I should use the term Meiser Sheni funds. So we're talking about the fact that some of the money is Meiser Sheni money, some of the money is unconsecrated, is not Meiser Sheni money. It's regular kosher money. But the animal is 100% a sacrifice. It's not like part of it is a sacrifice, part isn't, which the Gemara talks about that type of case also, that if the one limb is consecrated and the rest of the animal isn't, it depends if it's a limb that the animal can live without or whatever. It's a different law. Here we're talking about the whole animal is consecrated. This is a carbon, but within the fact that it's a carbon, it could be that some of the monies that were used to purchase it were mundane money, which is good, and some of it wasn't mundane money, which could look like a problem because you shouldn't be using Meiser Sheni money for an obligation. So it could be looked at as a problem, but we're concluding, according to Beis Hillel, that it's not an issue. But the idea of having an animal that is not fully consecrated, some of it is consecrated, some of it's holy, some of it isn't. That's not the case here. The case is the animal is completely holy, is being slaughtered as a sacrifice. There's laws of pigul, which means having the right intentions when you're slaughtering it and when you're receiving the blood. All those laws apply to the entire animal. Okay, so now that we've done both of these opinions, we now have a brisa that will be brought for each of these rabbis. So the Gemara's first brisa is Tanya Kavosei de Chizkiah. We have a brisa that follows the view that, well, I shouldn't say follows the view of Chizkiah, because Chizkiah is an Amoira. He's later than the brisa. But we have a brisa that supports. Okay, good. Supports Chizkiah. And Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. I'm sorry. There are two brises we're going to bring. We're actually first going to bring Rabbi Yochanan. It's going to support Rabbi Yochanan, and then we're going to bring Chizkiah. Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. We have a brisa that'll support Rabbi Yochanan. Tanya Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. We have a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan. And keep in mind, Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said that you can buy one big animal. And it's better to do. You could buy one big animal with some Meiser Sheni money and some unconsecrated money. But buy one big animal, and that's instead of buying many small animals, and one of the animals is completely unconsecrated funds. No, don't do it that way. Do one big animal and mix the monies together. Tani Kavasei de Rabbi Yochanan. We have this brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan. Misas. It says in the word misas. Misas in Hebrew means like a tribute. Misas nidvas yodcha asher titein. Right. Let me read for you the pasuk. The pasuk says, it says about the holiday of Shavuos. You should make the holiday of Shavuos for Hashem your God. Misas nidvas yodcha asher titein, tribute of the with your donation of your hands, that asher titein, that you will give, as Hashem asher yivarech Hashem l'kecha, Hashem blesses you. So it says in the word misas, and this teaches us that that Malamed teaches us that a person brings his obligation from unconsecrated monies. Uminayin shem ratza la'arev ma'arev. And how do you know if you want to mix, that you could mix? Talmud loymar kasher yavarechecha Hashem l'kecha, because it says that as Hashem your God will bless you, which teaches us that you would be allowed to mix monies together, and any type of thing that Hashem blesses you, you could use, which implies even the Meiser Sheni, that you could use it as Hashem blesses you. Anything that Hashem blesses you, you could join together. And that's how the Gemara understands that it would include Meiser Sheni. Now, Tanya Kavasei de Chizkiah, we have a brisa like Chizkiah, that it says, Misas this tribute. This teaches us a person should bring an obligatory offering from unconsecrated funds. And Beis Shammai Yomrim Yom Rishon min hachulin. Beis Shammai says that the first day of the holiday, the peace offering should come. The holiday peace offering should come from chulin, from unconsecrated property, and mikan va'elach min hamaiser, and from there and onward, you could bring from meiser. And seemingly, what that refers to is the shalmei simcha, the joy offerings. Beis Hillel says, achila rishayna min achulin, the first bite, the first eating is from chulin. Mikan va'elach min hamaiser. From there and on, the eatings could come from meiser sheni money. Which, what does it mean, the first eating? It means that the first sacrifice would come from unconsecrated funds, and afterwards you could bring other animals would come from meiser. So this is the opinion of Beis Hillel, that as long as you bring one animal, that's unconsecrated funds, that's bought from unconsecrated funds, the rest of the animals could be brought from consecrated funds, from Meiser Sheni. Now, Ushar, Kol Yemais HaPesach, and the other days of Pesach, Adam Yotzei Dechei Vasai, B'Meiser Behema, a person could fulfill his obligations of rejoicing. Again, we're talking about the other days of the holiday where you need to fulfill, you need to have meat because of the mitzvah of rejoicing. And so he would be able to fulfill his obligation with Shalmei, of Shalmei Simcha, with Meiser Behema, with the tithing of the animals. So all you need to do on the other days of the holiday is have simcha, is the joy. So you could use Meiser Sheni money for that with no problem. But here he says you need achila rishayna from chulin and mikan va'elach min hameiser. So what that sounds like is it sounds like it's following Chizkiya's view. Why? Because it says that you're going to have your first eating from unconsecrated funds. How do you have your first eating from unconsecrated funds if you put monies together? If you put your money together, it can't be from unconsecrated funds, because part of it is you put some money from this, some money from that, and you put it together. That means the animal, every part of the animal has a little consecrated in it and a little unconsecrated in it. So if it says it's supposed to be from unconsecrated funds, it must be that you're buying two separate animals. And the first animal is totally unconsecrated. The second animal after that are all consecrated animals, meaning that they are consecrated, meaning that they're being bought from Meiser Sheni money. And on that, it says, first one, the first eating, meaning that that first animal that you're eating, it should be from the unconsecrated, meaning not Meiser Sheni. Okay. Now, so that's the law of that's basically the law that we have two brises, either following Rabbi Yochanan or following Chizkiya, how to do what we're going to call teifel, that you could supplement your your supplement your Chagiga sacrifice with Meiser Sheni funds. This is Ula's statement that we're talking about Teufel, and there are two opinions how to understand it, how it's done, and the Gemara brought two brisas, and each one supports one of those views.